When it's all said and done, it's all about one world government. I'm talking about the International Criminal Court. We had no such animal until 2002. The whole purpose was to put teeth into international law so that we would have another level of the judiciary beyond the federal level. So you've got county, you've got state, you've got federal, and now they're trying to impose international law. Now, if this happens, where will we go? Well, it's pretty easy to see. Right now, the higher court can always overrule the lower court. So if you end up getting another court that's the highest court, the international court, the world court, then that court, the people who are pushing all this, say that it can rule that any of the laws below it are unconstitutional, and we now will have a world constitution with a world court system. Now, isn't it interesting that we already have a world charter at the United Nations? And isn't it interesting we already have an entity called the World Court? As a matter of fact, we have more than one. We've got the World Court. We've got the International Court of Justices. We've got the International Criminal Court now. So they are building this court system because they believe the answer to the problems of the world is one world government. Now, make sure we look carefully at this before we buy in, because what this necessitates is a suspension of all sovereignty. If you are willing to surrender the sovereignty of the United States of America to the United Nations, then I suppose this is a good idea. But if you do not want to belong to a grouping of nations that will tell the United States of America what it can and cannot do, then we better back up and look at this new gate a little bit longer before we buy it. Okay. There's an article that appeared today. It's entitled Palestinians to Change Tack or Approach as International Criminal Court at the International Criminal Court, and to ask the court to investigate settlement building. Now, what's happened is the Palestinians are thinking this over. They're supposed to officially become members of the International Criminal Court on April the 1st. April Fool's Day, no less. But they're thinking it over. They're thinking, okay, if we file charges against Israel for actions in the recent war, that's a two-edged sword because our people did a lot of things. Our people fired rockets at residences, at civilian targets, and they're not supposed to do that. They put their rockets in schools, in hospitals, and they're not supposed to do that. So if we go stir this pot up, we may get more than we bargained for. So they're rethinking everything and saying, all right, most of the world is against the settlements, the towns that have been built since the 67 war. Even though this is a 50-year-old issue now, it's still simmering below the surface. So they're saying that Israel has to withdraw from all these settlements. Well, not everyone says they have to withdraw from all settlements, but most people are taking that approach now, sad to say, including the United States of America. Okay, so if, in fact, the Palestinians filed charges against Israel for these settlements, there's a clause in the International Criminal Court that states if you have a war and if one side transfers its citizens into the territory gained during the war, that's a war crime. It's not permissible. Furthermore, if that side forcibly pushes citizens out of where they were in order to take their land and to occupy it, that's not permissible. It's called population transfer. Well, the Palestinians understand this because they were behind the scenes writing all the stipulations in the International Criminal Court Charter. As a matter of fact, They were written specifically with Israel in mind. I knew it at the time. I was following it very closely. Okay. Well, now it's time for all those chickens to come home to roost. And you're going to see in this article what's going on here, because the Palestinians are saying, we think this is our issue right here that almost all the world agrees on, Europe, the United States, the whole world, and Israel's going to have to buckle. Let's take a look at the article. Israel is expected to release a paper in the coming days giving its legal position regarding Operation Protective Edge as part of an effort to preempt an investigation by the International Criminal Court and before the release of what is expected to be a highly critical report by the UN Human Rights Council. Now, the reason they're hurrying this up and getting this done is because the charter of the International Criminal Court says that this court only tries cases that the state wherein the offense occurred either cannot or refuses to try it. If the state has a credible judicial system and if they launch a credible investigation, then the International Criminal Court has no right. Now, of course, it's the International Criminal Court that determines whether the investigation is credible and whether it was a sincere investigation. Nevertheless, Israel has jumped in to release this paper regarding the conduct of the war, Operation Protective Edge, between Israel and Hamas down in Gaza during 2014. The article goes on to say, the paper is an intergovernmental project that was drawn up with representatives from the Prime Minister's Office, the IDF, and the Justice, Foreign Affairs, and Defense Ministries. According to one official, it will be an overview from a legal perspective of the summer's events. These are the lawyers looking at everything, Israel's lawyers looking at everything. One governmental official said that since the ICC is reticent to take up cases which are being investigated by a country's judicial system that is recognized as competent, the paper will underline Israel's judicial review of the events over the summer. The Palestinian Authority, which already asked the court to investigate the Gaza operation, took another approach on Monday, indicating that it will also ask the court to look into Israel's settlement construction. Israel Radio quoted Palestinian Authority Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki as saying in an interview in the Arab press that the PA intends to formally join the ICC on April the 1st and immediately ask the court to investigate Israel's settlement policy. So they're shifting their focus from any crimes that may have been committed, the death of civilians and the collateral fallout from the war. They're saying we're probably not going to win that battle, or at least in so doing we'll implicate ourselves. So they're now focusing on Israel's settlement policy. According to the report, the reason the Palestinians are adapting this approach is that while the investigation they asked the court to carry out regarding the events in Gaza will open them up to counterclaims of being responsible for war crimes, they feel the settlement issue is a one-way street. In other words, Israel has gone into the territory that was captured during the 67 war, captured from the Jordanians no less. I don't know why the Jordanians are not filing these complaints. But anyway, the land was captured from the Jordanians. Then Israel went out there. Most of that land was state land when it was captured. It had never been sold to individuals. So in most of the places where settlements have been built, it was state land that was under the British mandate from 1920 to 1948. And then when the Brits pulled out, it was disputed territory. Well, when Israel established its state, the Arabs from all around closed in, took the territory, and tried to push Israel into the sea. Now, they didn't succeed in their effort to do that. So where do we find ourselves right now? Well, Israel says we didn't occupy anybody's territory. It didn't belong to anybody. The Palestinians are saying, oh, yes, it did. Now then, the Palestinians have gone 50 years later to the UN General Assembly, and on November the 29th of 2012, the UN General Assembly voted that this territory now belongs to the Palestinian state. They recognized the Palestinian state within 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Now, here's the next question. Does the General Assembly have the power to do that, or does that power actually lie with the UN Secretary Security Council? Most major decisions are done by the UN Security Council at this point. For example, no nation can be admitted as a member of the UN without the approval of the UN Security Council. So the next question arises, does the General Assembly have the power to recognize the statehood of the Palestinian Authority? Now, recently, the United States of America said the Palestinians are not a state. You should not be admitting them as a member of the International Criminal Court because they're not even an official state. They do not meet the criteria. So you see how simple this is? It gets more and more complex as we go along. But the Palestinians think they've got their issue that basically safeguards them while implicating the nation of Israel. Okay, now another interesting twist. Former Mayor Rudy Giuliani of New York City, a very highly respected person around the world and a lawyer, was in Israel over the last couple of days, and he had an interview at the Jerusalem Post. And he was giving his opinion about the International Criminal Court. Does the International Criminal Court have jurisdiction? And so on. I want to tell you what he had to say in our next segment. Right now, though, let me remind all of you out there that we will be leaving for Israel on April the 20th through May the 1st. I can hardly wait. I'm anxious to go, and I'd love for you to go with us. If you'd like to go with Judy and I, it's a 12-day tour. It's not one of those kiss 'em quick tours where you're there and you're gone and barely realize what you saw. You're going to see the land of Israel. You're going to walk through the Holy Land. You're going to experience it. And you'll hear the prophecies on site where they're soon to be fulfilled. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. So if you'd like to go with us, give us a call. The number to call is 1-800-Endtime. Simply ask to speak to someone about the tour. Hope you can go with us.